Hi everybody, Happy New Year firstly, and finally getting around to doing a short video of some of the questions that you've dropped in my Facebook page as promised. Some great questions, received a lot more questions that I was expecting, so it's good to know that some of my posts are actually reaching some of the quite large following I've got on social media. Without having to pay for posts. As you know, I'm not a big fan of social media. Obvious benefits are being able to follow your favorite musicians and artists and keeping up to date with their tour schedule and their release schedule. Apart from that, it's total crap and a waste of time. And unfortunately, it's being abused so that the under-talented are winning, and those of my generation who have seen a relatively large amount of success without the need for social media, we just haven't got the patience for it or interest, simple as that. But I like to keep posting, keep people updated, and I love your contact and feedback on my pages. Okay, so to kick things off, we'll jump into this one from Arvid Zimmer. I'm seeing lots of new names and followers on here, which is good. It's good to see that my music is still reaching all over the globe. It's good to know that I've got a global community. So Arvid Zimmer asks, what experiences shaped your understanding and taste in music? Good question to start from the beginning, my roots. So I think, like most people, my tastes were defined at home from the music I was exposed to at home, from my mother's and father's music collection, obviously. So for those of you that don't know, I was born in Liverpool. Birthplace is the Beatles. Yay. And I grew up in the same area as Paul McCartney, just 5 minutes walk away. We went to the same school but different times. So I grew up in the 70s when the Beatles were still massive. And it was blasted all day at home. My dad was a black music fan. If you didn't know, I'm of mixed parentage. That means that one of my parents was from another culture. She is mixed race. My grandfather was black African. So I grew up in a multi-ethnic household, you could say. And this reflected the style of music that was played at home. So during the 70s, it was a lot of Motown at home. Whatever was the latest trend and development in black music, I was exposed to it at home through my dad's record collection. Music was a very important thing. It was played at home all day, every day. Records everywhere in our house, cassettes, broken stereos, broken TVs, anything electronic my dad was into trying fixing it. He was into sound, electric, So I was very lucky. So through that exposure, I followed the trail and development of black music, from soul and funk at home, Earth, Wind & Fire, you name it, all the greats, James Brown, Funkadelic, etc., everybody, which developed, as you know, in the early 80s into like electro music, when it became more electronic. Black people were experimenting more with the latest electronic technology, synthesizers, etc. So which developed into electro. And around that time, I was kind of mature enough to kind of filter out what I liked and what I didn't like. Which was at the same time when hip hop was emerging also, which was fresh, you know, and appealed to my generation of kids. So with the whole sampling thing going on is when I delved into my dad's record collection looking for breaks and samples that these hip hop guys used. This is around 84, 85, when I was about 14, 15. And as I've stated on my Facebook pages, you know, as an older person, and when I signed my first record deals, I was able to kind of connect the dots, the connection between my childhood and my adulthood. A couple of examples. When I was younger, I remember vividly my dad playing Francois Kevorkian records at home when I was about 10. One notably a track by a group called, I think they're called the Strikers, and a very classic record called Body Music. And Francois Kevorkian was the engineer on that. One of my first record deals was for his famous, legendary New York based Wave Records, which I never thought would have been achievable when I was recording demo music back in the day. But I was very lucky through my perseverance and hard work over the years and constant networking during the MySpace era. I was lucky enough to build up a good rapport with the A&R man, Brendan Mola, who signed me. Another connection that I have relating back to my childhood and my dad's music collection, Shack Attack, legendary UK group. Really great group. Good crossover, street soul funk. Again, I was played in my household, like every household, anybody that listened to black music back in the 70s, you know, they were massive. So, I shortly after being signed to Wave Records, got signed to Free Range Records, one of arguably the UK's finest house music labels. And it was only after one of my first important gigs at the End nightclub, which is sadly now closed, with the record label owner, Jamie Jimpster, that I discovered that his father was actually the drummer of this legendary group, if I'm correct, the drummer. And so again, just kind of connecting the dots back to my childhood, you know. Right, let me try and keep this going. So they were some of the early influences. I started recording music for the first time around the age of 17, 18. And it was, well, before house music, I was kind of experimenting a bit with hip hop. When the first time I went into a recording studio, paid for the time myself, I was experimental with house music, and I liked the hard house stuff like Todd Terry, was using lots of samples and breaks, because this was the kind of house music that was very popular with the real house dancers in Manchester. That was played at the local youth clubs, etc., before it blew up and was taken on full scale to clubs like the Hacienda in Manchester, okay? So people used to, it was called house fusion dancing, so it was like a mixture of jazz, dance, jazz funk, and kind of breakdancing in a way. And this was the style of sound of house music that dancers used to dance to. A guy called Gerald, who wrote Voodoo Ray, he wrote this for a famous dance crew called Foot Patrol from Manchester. Simply just to dance to. He sent it off his demos to various record labels and radio shows, and yeah, it blew up. And that's another story from there. But yeah, that's why I got into like writing house music. Just really from like being in awe of the way these guys used to dance at the big clubs in Manchester. Forget about the Hacienda. It's more important black music clubs. Before that time, we're going back before 88, okay? So I'm like, those that were into like the whole like casual sort of scene in the UK, where it's all about the clothes you wore, the records you bought. We were always like at least a year ahead of the mainstream, you know, just to give you an indication of things with that. Okay, let's try and move on to the next question. How do you approach arranging a track? This is from Anthony Green. Peace, Anthony. Thank you for that question. So I always start with a blank template so that I never know where I'm going to end up, basically, because I don't want all of my releases to sound the same. It's nice in a way if you can kind of be identifiable by your sound, but if that happens, I think you fall into the trap of being too repetitive. And those that have followed my music over the last 12, 13, 14 years now, releases, know that I've released a variety of genres of house music. Techno stuff, more electronic stuff at the beginning, and now I've kind of mellowed into 122 BPM, deep house, melodic, atmospheric type of house music now, which I aim to kind of keep up. So yeah, how do you approach arranging a track? You've got to have your source material together first. Remember the key elements. It's got to have groove. It's got to have atmosphere. Groove and atmosphere are the two main things for me. Right, what else have we got? Pat Hart. Who is your favourite jazz pianist and why? I love jazz music. I'm a big jazz head. And to be honest, all day, every day, on my phone is what I'm listening to, the best contemporary jazz music. I've been a massive proper jazz fan for the last 30 years. And for me, it's the most exciting, evolving kind of music. It's such a wide spectrum, jazz music, that goes from classical music all the way to rock. All under the jazz umbrella, if you'd like to say that. Okay, my favourite jazz pianist, I'm trying not to pick such an obvious one, and he's called Joey Alexander, and I believe he's a Korean-born American artist. And I like him because he's no bullshit. It's all about performance and leaving out the comedy, which for me, when I've seen some of the other, more in the past, my favourite pianists like Robert Glasper, etc., it's too much comedy. And I don't want to hear jokes. I just want to hear him play from the heart. And Joe Alexander seems to do that. He's just a musician. That's all I want to. When I go to a jazz concert, that's all I'm interested about. I don't want to hear jokes. If I want that, I'll go to a comedy store. Okay. What else? Dean Ed Munson, describe your perfect warm-up DJ. What are they playing before you come on? What tempo, style, etc. paved the way for you to perfectly come on and do your thing, basically? That's a really good question, because it is an art, being a warm-up DJ, if you like. For me, there should be cross-genre. I was going to say cross-gender then. Cross-genre DJs playing a spectrum of black music. Of course, the time that they actually are playing should define the type of music that they play. If it's half empty, it should be a mixture of all kinds of music, eclectic. In my opinion, it'd be fantastic if it could be jazz, hip hop, soul, funk, a bit of quality disco, deep house, of course, slow. And then as more and more people start to fill the room, bring the tempo up, bring the funk up, ready for when to come on. But you should never play above the headline DJ in terms of sound, or of course BPMs, because of course that's happened to me many times where the warm-up DJs made that mistake of playing it like 126, 128 BPM, and I've got to try and bring it down to around 122 BPM, playing music with meaning instead of just banging it out, you know what I mean, trying to get all the fame and euphoria from the dance floor. That's wrong, So remember, if you're going to be a warm-up DJ for me, be observant. Freighter Abith, what was it like playing Panorama Bar in Berlin? That's a good question, because playing it when I was playing there often compared to now, you're going to have a different experience as a guest to the club. So the first time I played at Panorama Bar, I was invited by Len Faki, who was one of the resident DJs, and I was invited because I'd released several EPs on his own record label called Lens Series. He signed me because he was following my previous successes on other record labels, on Mule Music, Wave Music, etc. And we developed a really good friendship, and we still have that very good friendship. So yeah, he did a label night, Lens Series, and I was one of the invited DJs. That was one of my first really important gigs. Previous to that, I think a few months I'd played at Club Yellow in Tokyo, which is, if anybody knows a lot about the club scene and history, it was where everybody aspired to want to play. And I was invited to play there just 3 months after my first initial releases, which blew my mind, really. So yeah, the first time I was invited into Panorama Bar, and I went upstairs to meet all of the office staff, etc., and had a tour of the building, daytime when nobody was around. I was quite blown away and astonished at the similarities it actually was compared to the Hacienda in Manchester. I worked as a barman in Manchester's Dry Bar, which was owned by the Hacienda for a while. I didn't want to work at the Hacienda because it was just too crazy, having to deal with so many different types of problematic people. It was just crazy. So I preferred to work in Dry Bar, where we was given our VIP pass, so we could have fun in the bar and then go and party in the Hacienda afterwards. But I was blown away at the similarities, just to the way it was designed and the way it felt to the Hacienda in Manchester. The similarities was incredible. So playing Panorama Bar was, for me it was better maybe after the second or third appearance, when I was more used to what goes on there, etc., and what kind of music I can play there. But yeah, it was incredible, because at that time, for me, from my perspective, Berlin was at its height of quality clubbing. Before it suffered too much from techno tourism. Yeah, it was a fantastic experience playing at Panorama Bar. of course, it's amazing when you play a really good track early in the morning, just as the sun is coming up, and they open up momentarily the blinds for the sun to come in, and then they close them and we carry on partying. That's as much as I want to say about Berlin, Berghain and Panorama Bar, because it has changed enormously, sadly. Okay, let me find a few more. Right. Okay, this is a question maybe I've been asked quite a lot as well, from Lawrence Joshua. Did you know when you published Found a Place that it was going to be that good? No, I didn't. I had no idea it was going to blow up. So the story behind that track is that I was going through a hard time. There was an economic crisis when I was living in Spain during that time. Hadn't worked for a few months. I was broke. It was just after summer. Basically, I was living almost in a homeless state. I had no fixed address. I was living in a very cheap hostel, and I had a matter of days really just to find some cash before I'd have to sleep on the street and leave my belongings in somebody's place and just rough it on the streets until I got some money. Luckily, last minute, a friend of mine called Keith Worthy from Detroit. Hi, Keith. Hope you watch this and I hope you're good, brother. Gave me some money to release a track on his fantastic Aesthetic Audio. Bring it back, Keith. We need more of that. To release an EP on his record label, and he used that money to find a place to live. I was very lucky. I escaped full-on homelessness. In English, you say, by the skin of my teeth. So, when it's in my new place, I was buzzing and I just was constantly writing music on my really cheap equipment. You know, I wrote that track with a portable laptop I paid about €150 for, on a copy of Reason, Propelhead's Reason 4. A couple of, what they were basically were computer speakers that I paid about €50 for. And I found a place. And the images I had in my mind when I wrote that was like a lot of the big house classic tracks that groups that I mentioned before, like Foot Patrol, were dancing to. The famous jazz, funk, house, fusion dance crew that a guy called Gerald wrote Voodoo Ray for. And yeah, just that whole 90s, late 80s, early 90s house, piano house thing, like Kerry Chandler, etc., you know. And from what I was aware of, nobody else was really doing it either. So when I sent it out as a demo and passed it to Len Faki, because I had lots of other on-side demos, I was very surprised when he said, look, Tony, I'm going to compile the Berghain Free compilation CD and I'd like to include it on the mix. I thought, you're fucking mad, mate. A fucking 90s house, piano house track that's not really getting played in the clubs anymore, mixed in with like Berghain techno. I thought, how the fuck are you going to do that? But yeah, I was very surprised just how well it sort of, he fitted it into the mix, and it was really good. And yeah, of course, I was very surprised when it blew up as a single. And fortunately, from the success of that track, I've flew all over the world, played at a lot of the best, nightclubs all over the world, etc. And I'm still getting regular royalties several times a year from that track, which just proves a point, just how relevant that track still is, and hopefully will continue to be. So yeah, I'm very satisfied with that. As mentioned on Facebook, I have only just managed to receive another physical copy of the record for myself, after an 8-year absence, as sadly when I left my records at a friend's place and went on tour a little bit. 6 months later when I returned, sadly one of his flatmates had decided to sell half of my records. Would you? Okay, let's try and move on to another question. What's your favourite VST synth? Haven't got one really. Because most of mine's sample based. Most of my music's sample based on loops, you know. I'm still looking for that perfect VST that is orientated purely for like deep house music. So you've got your warm basses already set to use, you know, a polyphonic synth, really good warm pads, some interesting kind of like ARP sequences. It's really difficult to find a good one, you know. You have to go through hundreds of sounds, so it's very laborious when you've got to add those final touches to an arrangement to try and find that right VST that has got those finishing sounds. So if anybody's got any good advice, drop it in the comments. Okay, I'm just trying to think if I can find a couple of more questions that I would like to answer. Okay. Benjamin Gameth. What about the music formats of the future, mate? It's going to be pretty much 50-50. I saw in the last month that there's, I can't remember the name of the company now, but you can basically buy like home portable, like those little portable Vestax record players you get. They make, can't remember the name, California Instruments or something like that. They make like your own home vinyl cutting record player. So, I mean, very soon, through the popularity again of buying vinyl and the whole DIY culture of electronic music now, of course, as one company produces this, you'll have other companies that go into production of the same thing and lower the price. It's going to be a very accessible thing, an easy thing for you to do, to be able to press your own vinyl at home, which is great, I think, you know. I admittedly now just play digital when I'm in the club, just because of the ease of it and just purely the reliability of it, because I've played at some really big clubs. I won't mention the names, but have a very good big reputation for quality, and I've played brand new records, turned my back, and the needle has just zipped across the record because the technician before hadn't weighted properly the tone arm, and I've had to start the set again. So from that moment, I decided just to play digital, just because of the reliability of it, basically. Any more questions? I think we can wrap it up now, because I've actually talked a lot longer than I was hoping to. Oh, no. There was a very good question about... Now, I must answer it, because it's quite a controversial question that probably a lot of people won't speak about, but they should, especially people of my generation and my level of success. Now, Dean Ed Munson asks... No, sorry, not him. Marco Capozella. Ciao, Marco. How do you feel about untalented, uneducated people that seem to find themselves busier than the real deal artists out there these days? Should I answer this truthfully? Because it is social media, Facebook, and it could piss off a lot of people, you know, the gatekeepers that keep us out now, you know. So what's happened is we've had 2 resets basically in the last 8-10 years. First reset was Facebook, yeah, and social media prominence, Instagram. So it turned, and the whole, what can I say, lack of revenue from releasing music. So all become more about you being a DJ than an actual talented producer, you know? So it all became about how relevant you are on social media. And then all of the people with a very limited amount of music knowledge decided to become club promoters. And all they were interested in were the amount of likes that you have on Facebook, etc. You know, fuck your previous successes and legendary record labels, you know, that became irrelevant. History was rewritten from that moment, sadly. And of course, that's been exploited and exploited even more, so that your sexual gender is more important now than your actual talent. Oops, did I say that on Facebook? Your ethnicity. Oops. Okay. All right. Okay, so fuck, you know, the black artists from America who invented this music, etc. Fuck them. If you're of a certain gender and ethnicity, we'll pay you 10 times more than what these, you know, innovators are getting paid, you know, because you've got 100 million thousand likes and you're posting selfies 6 times a day wearing 6 different outfits. Sadly, the only people that lose really are you, the audience, because now your clubbing experience is pretty shit. You've got a massive hole. So the second reset has been COVID. Now you've got a lack of venues. Okay. So this has created a massive hole in the center where people like myself stood. So now it's been separated into a 2-tier level of clubbing experience. You have your local DJs, your local amateur DJs like DJ Shit in the Club. I know you know who I'm talking about. Peggy Poo, etc., who are at the other spectrum, you know? Your festival dickhead DJs, you know? Who haven't got the talent. Who, if you turn back the clock 15, 20 years ago, they would have been laughed out of the club for playing the shit and acting the way they do behind the DJ decks. Trust me. When clubbing was at its peak and experience and at its height. So, okay. I think that's answered a lot of the great questions that you've dropped. There are many more that maybe I'll do in a second video. So, yeah. Keep following me on Facebook. I'm constantly releasing music. I'm self-promoting a lot. Just because the whole kind of like booking agent thing is saturated. Absolutely fucking saturated and a mess. And my past experiences of booking agents, not just myself, but many other of my peers from Detroit, everywhere else, I've had similar experiences with a lot of these dickhead booking agents and agencies, okay? Where in the past I've been sent to the wrong airport. I've been flown long distance flights and my agent did not organise a visa and have been returned. I've had other agents rip me off financially and I've only found out when I went to the club, did the gig and received a much lower amount of money that he actually organised with my agent at the time. as during these periods, I shared the same agent with some of my record label bosses, and it's just fucked things up relationship-wise with them and other people. Those that are at my level in the industry know what I'm talking about and what a fucking pain in the ass it is, basically. So to cut out the middleman, you're dealing with me directly, right? So there's no messing about. We're cutting out the middleman. Things are done professionally, no messing about. And because the club scene needs to save cash, I see them as an unnecessary element in the game. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative, and I hope to see some of you, or a lot of you, soon in the club. I'm hoping that side of thing starts to improve again this year. I really do. Okay, peace.